So our guest speaker is going to be Jennifer, and she is with the Valley Water District. And she will be talking about whose responsibility it is. We have, like, I believe, 3 entities that takes care of Coyote Creek. And so it's just, you know, kind of confusing who does what. And then we have also Elizabeth, and she is the trail manager for the city of San Jose. And when the trails are open, then her team takes over. It's called, I guess it's called operations and maintenance team.
Oh.
So those will be the people that will kind of educate us tonight and let us know what happens when there's a fire, and hopefully there's not going to be a fire because we've had 3 so far. So we're really kind of nervous. So I'm going to let Jennifer go ahead and start talking, and you know, we go from there.
And Jean, just really quick before Jennifer starts, I wanted to mention that I develop trails to construction, and then I hand them off to our operations and maintenance team. So I have invited Frank and Jeff from our maintenance team. I'm not sure if they're here. Frank or Jeff, if you're here, give a shout.
I thought I saw Frank's name.
I'm here. I'm Frank.
Amazing. Thank you.
So go ahead.
And so I'm Jen. I'm the deputy for watersheds operations and maintenance at Valley Water. So we do maintain large portions of creeks throughout the county. And before I start, I'd like to introduce Director Richard Santos. He's actually the board member that represents your district.
How you doing, everybody? It's a
Hi,
pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that Jean has asked us to participate, because one of the myths in this county is that the water district owns all the easements, which is not true. But we're always willing to work with everybody. So I'm glad that Jennifer's here. She does a great job. And Jean, thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome.
Okay, so to start, your reach of creek is a complicated reach, like you said, because there's actually there's a lot of noise on the line from somebody.
Let me see if I can mute.
Okay.
Yeah, no, hang on.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, so as Jean mentioned, there are 3 property owners. Oh, I don't have screen sharing enabled. If you guys could assist with that. There's 3 property owners on this reach of creek, one being the city of San Jose, and their lands actually back up directly to your neighborhood. And just north of that, as you approach the downstream end at Tasman, it's actually owned by the state of California. And Valley Water owns most all of the lands on what would be the east side of that reach of creek. That being said, we have constructed a capital flood protection project there, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. A lot of the lower reaches of Coyote Creek were constructed to meet that 1% storm event, what we like to call a 100-year flow. And so we do maintain portions of the state lands and the city lands for that design flow conveyance, what you would call that design flow conveyance. So you will see us doing in-channel work to ensure design flow, whether that's sediment removal or whether that's vegetation removal. You also will see us doing the weed abatement to allow for inspection of any structures we built in that reach for flood protection. So the levee faces and also, you know, the floodplain areas that we need to keep clear of woodies. So your side of the creek, that western bank, there's a large floodplain that we do mow on an annual basis. So there are certain activities that we do in that reach. And then there are also activities that the city does in that reach. And I'm sure Liz will talk about what that looks like from the trails end of things. And, you know, we can start to discuss some of the other issues that you might have and who would be responsible and what we can do. I understand the fear from the fires. Obviously, I did walk the entire reach after both of the big fires, the one last summer and the one this year. And so we're intimately familiar with it. Okay, Liz said Frank will be talking. So Frank's on the hook about O&M. So as you know, the last fire, I think Jean had mentioned it in this email invite, supposedly was arson. There was reports to the Milpitas Police Department that somebody drove up in a vehicle and lit 3 spots on fire. And so obviously that's a situation that none of us can control. It's unfortunate, but we are monitoring the area. We've been taking, photo points of the fire for the last 2 years, and we have photo points that we took before that for one of the other projects. So we are watching how it restores itself, and we will be coming in to treat certain types of invasive vegetation because we want to encourage the native plants to grow back. And that's really for 2 reasons. Native plants provide better wildlife habitat, which, we do manage this reach for wildlife habitat. And then secondly, the invasives tend to be the plants that burn more intensely in fires, right? The native plants are very much adapted to fires coming through and then to really passively revegetating after those fires. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the cottonwoods are growing from the bases of the trunks already, and there are some native seedling plants coming in. We're also seeing some regeneration with the willows. So that's all good news. Sorry, I have a loud dog if you can hear him howling. And so I do want to let you know that we're very active in the area. You might not see us all the time, but we are monitoring what's going on. I have spoken to both fire departments and they are aware of the situation. And although there have been encampments in the past, those have mostly been on what would be the East Bank, the east side, the Milpitas side. And let's have a little discussion about that, because I know that's also another countywide issue, and a lot of people aren't as informed with our limitations as government agencies. So the limitations are basically twofold, right? During the COVID pandemic, the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control, really recommended that the encampments be left in place to not further spread COVID. So that was kind of one. The second issue that government agencies are really faced with is there was a recent federal case law ruling. It's called Martin versus the City of Boise, if you want to do a little research on it. And that basically said that if your city does not have enough shelter capacity for the unhoused, then you cannot persecute them for sleeping on public lands. And so the 3 entities in this reach are obviously all public land entities, right? The state, Valley Water, we're a special district of the state, and the city of San Jose. So while kind of pre-COVID, you might have seen that agencies were, focusing on abatements. Really post-COVID, we're focusing on more of an encampment management strategy. And we do come in regularly and clean those encampments. And what I mean by that is we're really focusing on ensuring that the trash, the debris, and the hazardous pollutants are not entering the waterway. And so we do have an encampment cleanup crew that operates on a daily basis. Of course, it's a countywide issue, so your reach of creek is just one of the reaches that we manage routinely. And so maybe some of you have seen the signs. We will post these signs that basically say we're coming through, and you need to maintain your 12 by 12 footprint and keep your belongings in it, because we'll be removing everything outside of that footprint. So that is active, and we actually did do that the last cleanup, just I want to say the week before the last big fire. And once the fire happened, I did walk through that entire stretch, and there was no encampments at the time, so they did leave post-fire. However, I know a couple are back, so that continues to be a concern, but I think it's important for you all to understand what we're faced with as public agencies. And so when Jean had mentioned she wanted this meeting, I had mentioned that maybe getting the city of San Jose in on the housing side of things, or the Beautify San Jose team, who really concentrates on the unhoused issues, would be a good thing, because really we're all trying to work together. We each have our specialty. Obviously, Valley Water, we're really concentrating on being the environmental stewards of the creeks, that in addition to flood protection and the areas that we have constructed, which this reach is, as I mentioned before, a constructed reach. But at the same time, we really need to, count on the other agencies like Santa Clara County and the city's housing department and their homeless response team to really help us out, because we're not an enforcement agency and we don't have outreach services. And so it's really a collaborative effort with everyone to really try and work on the issue as best we can. So I know I've said a lot. I'm sure you all have a bunch of questions. So I'll just kind of let you guys go at it and continue to explain, and hopefully we can get everything answered.
Okay, does Frank have anything to say? Does he want to add anything?
Well, for our side of it, the city of San Jose, the Parks Department, we take care of the grassy areas and the trail. We don't take care of any of the easement or the land going towards the water. That's usually someone else's responsibility. Pretty much Jennifer or Jen covered most of everything for San Jose. Beautify San Jose. They do the homeless, but it's more their priority is schools or where children are present. I think that's it for now. Maybe answer some questions.
Yeah, so I brought up a map so you guys can kind of see the layout here. The green parcels are Valley Water fee. So we do, as I said, own and manage the entire east bank of the creek. And we also do have fee on this section of the west bank adjacent to Montague. Then it becomes city land here, all the way up to here. So everything adjacent to your neighborhood is city land. And so again, it's an easement for us, but we're really only maintaining that land for our two purposes, either in channel to maintain flow conveyance, or either really abating the structures that we've built, so the levee from weeds or other vegetation, so we can do our annual inspections. We do have to report out on this Reach Creek and many others that have levees that are constructed and certified by the Army Corps of Engineers. So we did actually just submit that report. And so, as Frank said, while they're managing the trail on that side, we're really just managing the land that would be on the levee itself, the slopes of the levee, and really just 15 feet from the levee toe. That's our responsibility per the construction of these facilities in collaboration with the Corps to protect the area from floods. So I hope that is informative. This area here is state lands. And so again, we have easement and we're maintaining for flood conveyance and inspection of our structures, i.e. levees and maintenance road. So now we'll start the questions. I hope that makes it really clear.
Yeah, that looks very good. That I can understand that better, and I think everybody else can too. I'm going to have a couple questions or statements for Frank later on. I want to hear from
Mike has his hand up.
oh, Mike. Do you have a question, Mike?
Yeah, I've got a quick question.
Okay.
Looking at this graphic, I kind of heard that the yellow was both city and state. Is it just kind of dividing the line about halfway down and below a certain point city and above a certain point is state?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting me click. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this portion here that I highlighted, this is state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this
so-
portion here is city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The other question I have is, do you know what department or departments in the city is responsible for that segment?
So like Frank said, if it's a trail issue, so i.e. kind of maintaining the trail or maintaining the safety of the trail for the public, then that would be the O&M department, as I understand it. And then the lands in general, though, I'm unsure, Frank. I know in the past there's been issues with the vegetation here that's directly adjacent to the neighborhood. What department would have the responsibility for maintenance there?
That would be the park maintenance, park district maintenance.
Okay,
So
So-
the overflow area in the creek is the responsibility of the city parks department.
Well, if it's in the going down the embankment, it's not us. It's only the flat area. So anything that's going into the creek, from the flat area going into the bank at all, I think that's the water district. And all the flat area from the trail to the, I guess easement would be the park maintenance. And
So
it
the
depends.
interested in is from the top of the trail, the creek side top of the trail to the creek. So
So-
that it's like 90% of kind of the upper part of the yellow area.
so again,
Is it possible to turn off the overlay so we can see the?
sure, yeah, I can turn
think
off the
that would-
overlay. Yeah, absolutely. So it's complicated, right? And I hear the question you're asking, so let me try to answer it as best I can. Here we go. Let's turn off.
So just, the reason I'm asking is that's where the fire primarily hits, is
Yes.
the flat overflow area
Yes.
and the embankment leading up to the creek from our
Yes.
side.
So this embankment here, what you're calling the embankment is the levee, right? That's the slope of
Yeah.
the levee. So on an annual basis, we are mowing that levee because we need to inspect it, right? It's our job to make sure there's no cracks or that there's no erosion. And so we're inspecting it for those reasons. We're also mowing it to facilitate that inspection, right?
So by the way, thank you. We're very fortunate. If you guys hadn't been doing that, the fires would have been much, much worse.
Absolutely, and I agree. And so this floodplain area, what you see here, right? We have to make sure that that floodplain doesn't have any woody vegetation on it, right? That's because we have a certain design flow for this reach of creek, right? That we need to maintain on an annual basis. And so our O&M guidelines say no woody vegetation on this floodplain. So the floodplain is also mowed on an annual basis. So that is our responsibility as a flood protection agency. Now, let's say there was another issue. Let's say a bunch of encampments come here. That would not be something that we would oversee because it's city lands, right? And so they would have landowner responsibility, right? Let's say you had issues with this vegetation here, like Frank said, that would also be a city issue, right? Because that isn't on our constructed levee. If there's any public safety issues, or if there's a hazard tree issue that's potentially occurring here that might affect the trail, that would also be a city responsibility. Does that
Okay,
help clear things up?
Yeah, so for the specific example for simplicity of homeless encampments on the floodplain, I'm hearing it's city responsibility. Am I
Yes.
also hearing that it's the Parks Department's responsibility?
So the city, and Frank step in, but the city has a team that responds to encampments. It's called their homeless response team, right? And we actually work on a daily basis with them. We
So-
collaborate and we pretty much do the cleanups. And if there's a necessity for an abatement, we work together. But
Okay.
the city as the landowner agency would prioritize and basically make the decision as to what action needs to be taken. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So it seems like the responsibility for dealing with an issue in the floodplain depends on the type of issue that it is. If it's homeless, it's that department. If it's something else, it might be some other department. Now,
Absolutely.
If we as a community wanted additional mowing of that area, it being a city responsibility, would that be a Parks Department responsibility?
So mowing of which area? The area outboard of the levee?
Flood- The floodplain?
Oh, the
I
floodplain.
do it once a year. Actually, you've been good. You've been doing it a couple times a year.
Yes, we
but
have been, and we're coming back to do Lower Coyote again recently. I just saw in a meeting today that we submitted another biological clearance request.
Right. So if we wanted to request additional mowings, for example, it wouldn't necessarily be your job because you've got a purpose for the mowing that you're doing. So it
So-
sounds like it would be, we would have to approach the city for that, but it's unclear what department would be responsible for fire, not prevention, but fire avoidance in the floodplain.
Yeah, that's a good question. And so, like you said, we typically do come and do it twice a year. And that's really because of our maintenance roads here.
Yeah.
And so we need to maintain access here at all times, right? And so when we're coming back the second time, we're really concentrating on this lower maintenance road access. But what you're saying is, what if you're concerned about fuel ladder reduction after we've already mowed it twice? And again, you're right. You know, city lands we're only maintaining them for certain reasons. So if it was a fuel ladder issue, then that would be a city request.
Right, and that's what I'm understanding, and that makes sense to me. What I'm trying to determine is if anybody's got a feel for what department within the city would be responsible for that.
Sorry, that would be the park district that the land falls under. So we do have multiple districts that take care of certain different sections of the Coyote Creek Trail. This part would be my responsibility.
Okay, thank you for that information. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a question in the chat, and it says the east side of Coyote Creek lies on the Milpitas side. Why isn't Milpitas involved in the cleanup?
Hello?
Okay, got it. Sorry, I could have put my unmute button.
Okay.
So the reason is that we have an agreement with the city of San Jose. We've actually had an agreement with them since 2011, right? Where we basically collaborate and share responsibilities. And so Valley Water is, you know, obviously we're very adept at providing the labor and the equipment when maintaining creeks. So that's our responsibility when we work together. And the city are, you know, obviously specialize in the outreach to the unhoused, and also they provide police support for us. Because again, we're not an enforcement agency, and you know, the police do work for the city. So we've had that agreement since 2011. We don't have that type of agreement for all cities. I have reached out to Milpitas. I have sent a proposed agreement. We have not made that official yet. That being said, we have worked with Milpitas on much smaller areas. And so they have helped us out by providing outreach and police support in smaller areas. And so it really depends on the city, what our agreement looks like, and how well they're staffed, right? Obviously, the city of San Jose is much larger than the city of Milpitas. Like I said, the city of San Jose has their own homeless response team and a whole nother division called Beautify San Jose that really concentrates on, encampment cleanups. And so, you know, we're very lucky to have that support from the city of San Jose, but Milpitas is a much smaller city, and you know, they don't have those services as of yet.
I have a question from one of the owners that lives right on the trail side. And so I'm going to read his two statements, and this will be probably for Frank. Since around June 2020, I and the Millbrook Community Management have been requesting the city of San Jose to clear all the bushes, to clear all the bush along Millbrook property line with the creek. Finally, a few months ago, after I met with Hugo and Joe Nye from Parks and Rec, they cleared most of the bush, but number one, they did not haul away the brush they cleared, which is now all dried out and piles and is a fire hazardous. Number two, there are still 2 sections along the property fence which needs to be cleared. The second one he has is, during the time I was attempting to get the city of San Jose to clear the brush, I visited San Jose Fire Department and several times and talked to at least 2 fire captains. While the San Jose Fire Department can mandate residents to perform fire abatement work on their properties, the fire department cannot use the same mandate against the city of San Jose and Parks and Rec. Why should residents be mandated to perform fire abatement work while the city is not mandated to do the same? So that was for Frank.
As for the fire department and who they could mandate, I don't have an answer for that. The piles and the brush, we can get, just so some of you know, that live in the neighborhood, I barely started in this district. I was formerly at Lake Cunningham for the last 18 months, and the city is transferring a lot of their parks maintenance supervisors because of vacancies. I actually just got promoted to supervisor, but we started July 25th. So I seen the email, and we're gonna try to get to the brush and the piles as soon as possible. But as for the reason why the fire department can't mandate the city to follow the same rules as the homeowners and the public, I have no idea on that. We'll have to look that up and find out why. I don't have an answer to that.
So it's actually just a little information about fire codes, and Director Santos might have something to say too, because he's a retired firefighter. But the fire codes are actually set by the state. So if you want to look them up, you can just Google, state fire code regulations of California, and you can kind of read through those, and it'll give you a little background on what's required. And it does differ between residential areas versus areas that are managed naturally. And actually, you know what, Jean, I'll send you, I have a fact sheet on kind of what we're talking about in terms of activities dependent upon land ownership and how we manage them at Valley Water. But then I also have a fact sheet on fuel abatement, which basically educates about the fire codes. And, it does talk about Valley Water's kind of responsibility and methodology for fuel abatement. So it will help out a little bit, but again, it's really the state that is mandating what should be done.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a question for Jen. We were a little confused about the relationship or lack of relationship with Milpitas. Is there something that's not being done on the Milpitas side because you don't have an arrangement with them? And ideally, what kind of relationship would you like with them?
Yeah, no, and actually, it's not that there's something not being done. We're managing that land. It's our land, and we'll continue to manage it. And we do have a relationship with them. Actually, their deputy of Parks and Rec used to work for Valley Water. We started around the same year, way back when. So we do have a relationship with them. But like I said, they're just not as big a city. And so maybe moving forward as things change, they may staff up in certain situations. So I didn't mean to indicate that we don't have a relationship. We do have a relationship. And when there are any issues, I absolutely send an email over there. And, they're always willing to communicate and try to assist. But again, it's Valley Water's land, and we'll continue to manage it as best we can.
Thank you.
Okay, so if anybody has any more questions for Jennifer, go ahead and speak your piece. Otherwise, I'm going to go over to Liz and have her tell us a little bit what she does and how she maintains the trails and make sure it's safe and there aren't anything that can harm the residents, and regarding bushes that's not being cut down or or being hauled away, if that's her responsibility, I don't know, but that's what we want to find out from her.
Thanks, Jean. So my name is Liz and I am the trail manager for the city of San Jose, and I've been working here for a couple of years. So this particular trail predates my employment with the city, but the city does build class 1 trails. So this Coyote Creek Trail is a class 1 trail. They're ideally paved 12-foot trails that are fairly flat so that they can be used by all modes of transportation, from like rollerblades to bikes to skateboards to anything outside of a vehicle. And there's usually 2-foot shoulders, and we like to keep 3 feet on either side of the trail outside of the shoulders clear in case anyone, we call it a fall zone. So if anyone falls, they don't hit their head on anything. So that's pretty much what we consider a trail. Up until they are made permanent, they're in many cases interim and built along valley water maintenance roads. So we do have, like Jen mentioned, really good relationship with valley water, and we try to help each other as much as we can. So when I work with our public works department. It's not just me developing our trails. There's a team across the city of many departments that works on trails. And it's typically our public works department who does the engineering and landscape design of our trails. We like to make it clear where trail entrances are so that vehicles do not use it. In cases when vehicles do get through, we will have a site visit and really study the area and improve it so that cars will ideally not be able to cross through it. So we work with Valley Water to make sure that the areas that they need to access and that our maintenance vehicles need to access are still accessible to approved vehicles, but inaccessible to private vehicles. So that it's typically with like swing gate fencing and bollards, and that's in severe cases when vehicles actually enter the trail. Up until we have seen vehicles on trails, we really hope that our trail access point and signage keeps vehicles aware and off of our trails. I don't know, was there anything else you were wondering about? And then I hand it over to our maintenance department. So Frank did a really good job explaining, and welcome to this district, Frank, and congratulations on your promotion. Frank did a really good job of explaining what the city does with regard to maintenance along our trail system.
Well, can you?
Yeah, if you're on.
I do know that, and I have a picture of a large black truck that was on the trail right behind Irish Chan Park. I don't know if the person went any further, but there is somebody that is driving on the trail. So maybe you might have somebody go out and look at the gate, I guess, that is easily accessible now.
Yeah.
And I know
Thank
I know
you.
you guys are all fairly new. Well, I know Frank is. And but he's been very helpful, and he's going to have to learn really fast because we sure don't want to have another fire. But anyway, so I have another person that would like to say something, and her name is Pooja. And so if you want to.
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead and let us know.
Yes, hi. So I was just listening to everything, and I'm not really sure if this is entirely, I don't know, like how relevant this is to what we are discussing at this call right now. But I just wanted to say that I am a resident. I live in Parkside condominiums, and I was talking to Jean and Michael about so there is this non-profit that I like often go to volunteering with, which is called Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful, and they specialize in maintaining and cleaning up a Coyote Creek, and then stuff like that. So I have been speaking with the vice president. I think she's the vice president of that organization, and have been asking her to do a cleanup of our section of the trail between Montague and Tasman. And I guess this is more of like a question from my side for the River Oaks Neighborhood Association, where I wanted to see, because the only, I think, biggest problem as I see with her like doing a cleanup in this section of the trail is I don't know where the volunteers would park when they come, because there's no place where, because the other sections of the trail that they clean up, they have like a park or some place where there's a lot of parking. And so that's why this is something that I wanted to discuss with River Oaks Neighborhood Association to see if we could like assist them or like partner with them so that their volunteers can like find parking or something like that. But also I wanted to like, just kind of see if it makes sense to invite them to do to clean up the section of the trail, and then if that should be on the section that's adjacent to our neighborhood or like the one that's on the other side of the creek. I don't know.
Go ahead, Mike. Mike has something to say.
Yeah, I think cleaning the creek is a good idea. Didn't realize that parking was an issue. I think that the residents of the complexes along the creek area could talk to their homeowners associations and get agreement from the homeowners associations to, be welcoming for some of the people who are cleaning to park in the complexes. So I think we'd be willing to reach out to the homeowners associations and see if we can get them on board.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking. That would be super helpful. And of course, if a lot of the residents in this area want to volunteer for the cleanup, then parking is not an issue, I guess, anymore.
I think that's a great idea. And she has the date, November the 12th,
Yes.
to meet with her group that wants to clean up our section. And I think Mike has an excellent suggestion that if people from outside the area want to help, then we can talk to the homeowners association and see if we can have some parking open for them to park the cars. Plus all the neighbors, all they have to do is kind of walk over.
Right.
So
So when you say we can talk to the homeowners association, so do you mean like Mike, like RONA, like Mike and you could talk, or like as residents, the residents talk, or how do we do that?
well, I would think Mike would talk to his president and the president of Millbrook and the president of the board of Crescendo would also get together and work out some kind of a plan.
So I think we would try to use something like Nextdoor or Facebook to reach out to the other complexes and find if there was somebody there willing to talk to their board. I'd be willing to talk to my board. Jean doesn't actually live along the creek, so we'd have to find somebody from Crescendo and somebody from Millbrook.
Yeah. We do know someone in Millbrook. I mean, we do know people who live in those complexes. So it would be a matter of just asking them to give us a contact information for their board.
Well, I think it'd be better if they contacted the board as a resident as opposed to an.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I just wanted to mention a couple of things. So we did come in and do another cleanup post fire. So we did get any debris that had burned, from the encampments on that side of it. Secondly, if you do decide to keep Coyote Creek beautiful, we're happy to post that on our Valley Water social media accounts. We actually just did that or are going to do that for the cleanup that they're hosting at Watson Park at the beginning of September. I guess my third question though is, because there's really not that much trash in this reach, would they be doing other things except for cleaning up trash? Or I thought that they solely just kind of cleaned up trash.
Well, they do other things, but I don't know how much of those other things is possible to do in our section of the trail. So I think I've asked Deb to come out and take a look and see
Okay.
what she thinks. But again, I don't know actually how they're going to do it. But again, I guess this is a question for maybe Jean and Mike and all of us, that I don't know if think, because I feel like the section of the trail that's on the other side of the creek probably is more dirty typically than the one that's like bordering the neighborhood. But I don't know if they'd be doing both or yeah.
Are you talking about the Milpitas side?
Oh, so oh, I see. So when you cross over to the other side of the creek, it's Milpitas. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the side that we just cleaned after the fire too. So our crews got in there and really made sure they got any debris that had burned.
Mhm.
I think we might want to leave that up to Valley Water to handle that side over there. But I have a question in that National River Cleanup Day, Valley Water hosted a cleanup site. And also, in addition to their cleanup, they also brought hot meals and hygiene kits and invited specialized organizations like opening outdoors. Do you guys do that in our area?
So actually, yeah, we do. This year we decided to do it on Guadalupe River on the Blossom Hill to Branham stretch. I actually took part in that event. It was very successful. The year before, we did it on Coyote Creek, actually. We did it at the Tully Road stretch of creek. And so that was city-owned lands. In addition to that, we hosted the event, not for the public, but our internal staff did it on National River Cleanup Day from Montague to Charcot. So we did host 2 areas on Coyote Creek last year.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I want to get back to the fire mitigation while we have the right people here to discuss, and we will look to support the cleanup. Rhonda's actually here with me, and she had some questions about some possible fire mitigations steps that she heard might be happening.
Yeah, my name is Rhonda. I'm Mike's wife. We are the biggest concern of the residents right now is what can be done to really mitigate the fire risk, because we know there are so many dead trees out there. So we're wondering, and when we'd heard at one point there was talk of maybe Cal Fire coming in and doing a controlled burn of the creek area in front of all the homes. So wanted to know what's the current thinking on what additional steps can be taken to really mitigate any future fire risk.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I have not been contacted by Cal Fire, so a prescribed burn is news to me. It is pretty hard to get permits to do a prescribed burn in the urban part of the valley. I haven't seen it done, so I would be surprised if that would happen. Typically, it's in the upper watershed areas that are permitted to do things like that. That being said, you know, there are lots of what you're calling dead trees, right? But as I said, a lot of the trees are resprouting. And so to explain a little bit about our limitations on a creek or another riparian wetland area, we actually we're basically permitted to do activities on the creek channel through 7 state and federal regulatory agencies, right? They have jurisdiction over certain areas of the creek channel. And so we have a 10-year programmatic permit from these 7 regulatory agencies that allows us to do certain things, right? For certain reasons, again. And so while you may look at the trees and think they're dead, they typically do resprout. And the other factor is that, you know, dead trees are habitat for birds and also for little bugs and critters, right? And so the regulatory agencies don't allow us to remove a tree just because it's dead. It's still considered an impact. And so in order to be able to cut down these trees, we would actually have to submit a project proposal to get approved by these regulatory agencies and then pay mitigation. And what that looks like is for any tree that we removed that was native, whether it was dead or alive, we would have to mitigate at a 3-to-1 ratio for the removal of that tree. And so, you know, really in situations like this where they tend to restore themselves, right? And so we do expect that a lot of these trees will resprout and become trees again. And others that may be dead, they will fall into the creek channel, and then that becomes what is called large woody debris. This is a salmonid creek, so any woody debris that falls into the channel is also regulated by these regulatory agencies. They love to see that. It is habitat for the fish, and it's a very important part of the creek system. When the fire happened last summer, I did meet on site with the fire department, and they did tell me that they feel as though there's adequate buffer on both sides of the creek. And what they mean by that is we're maintaining the lower maintenance roads, and we're performing the weed abatement in any of the areas that aren't truly riparian. They did not instruct us to do any further fuel abatement work due to that fact. So you probably noticed with the two fires where the fire trucks were basically working from, were on the lower maintenance roads, right? And so on the Milpitas side this year, they were all parked and stationed there on the lower maintenance roads, treating all of the burned areas. And so if they felt as though the fire had, would have jumped that area, they certainly would not have parked their vehicles there. They were confident that there was adequate buffer on both of the occasions with the fire spreading. So I know it's not how you would typically think of your landscape area and how you manage it. But again, this is a natural habitat. And while we want to do certain things for fuel load reduction, like mow the grasses and ensure that the woodies aren't spreading so that we have adequate buffers, we are meeting those state fire codes. Now, I'm not saying that we might not choose to do something. We may, but we're still actively monitoring the situation, and staff just went out last week to prepare a PowerPoint for me that I looked through. And so we may choose to do something, but right now we're just kind of assessing and seeing how much of the trees will regrow and restore.
Okay, I appreciate the information. I have a better understanding of what's happening out there. So thank you.
So I think this would be for Frank, and this particular person lives at Millbrook. And so he said the City of San Jose tree removal permit process needs to be changed to allow for easier removal of non-native California trees, which are a fire hazardous. When I met with Joe from Parks and Rec, he commented that the Canary Island pines in Millbrook, close to the creek, are a fire hazardous. We have been trying to remove and replace all the Canary Island pines in Millbrook for the past 7 years. But the City of San Jose tree removal permit process makes it too difficult and costly to get approval for the removal of these trees. Permits for removal of trees which are fire hazardous need to be easier to get approval, and permit fees should be minimized. Now, also too, there are about 3 or 4 real tall dead trees, pine trees, that is on the corner of Zanker and River Oaks. There's a dog park there. It's a small one, but my concern is, along with the party that just made this statement, is fire, and and they're non-native. So what do we do there? How can the city help us in that regards?
Okay, maybe Joe was not clear. So just so you guys know, I am new, but I have worked for the Parks Maintenance Department for 25 years. So I do know, a lot of our policy, and our tree policy is this: if a tree is dead, or it's let's see, I'm trying to think of the word. If it's a safety hazard, if it's leaning and it could possibly fall on people, then our process for removing it is 10 days. And if it's an immediate danger, like, it could fall on the next person that walks under it, then our arborist. So here's our process in park maintenance. What we do is we take pictures and send them to our arborist. And what he does is he has the arborist and he has an assistant, they'll come and either look at the tree in person or look at the photos. If they deem that that tree safe, they will tell us to leave it alone. We do not want to take out live, healthy trees. But if it's dead or if it's a safety concern, it could be gone within 24 hours. So I think Joe maybe just didn't explain it to you. So I think the issue you're having with the canary pines is if they're alive and they're healthy, the city's not going to remove them. And if the tree is dead, I could put my email address, in the chat, and you can send me an email with a couple of pictures of these trees, and I can go look at them and get them removed pretty quickly. If they are a hazard, if they don't get removed, then the arborist thinks that they are safe, and if they're alive, he's not gonna let us remove them. Does that answer your question? You're muted.
It's the AC.
I think that's fair, and if you would leave your email, that'd be great. And the party who asked these, had made these 3 statements, wasn't able to make the meeting, so he asked me to do this for him. But because we are recording this, then he can listen to and look at the meeting and possibly contact you.
So just to add to that a little bit, just because I love talking about trees, I'm actually a licensed arborist too. Valley Water does really take invasive tree removal seriously. And so we did do a project on your reach of creek several years back where we removed all of the invasive vegetation and trees that we were permitted to do so. So we do have an invasive plant removal program that these 7 state and federal regulatory agencies have approved. And we actually get mitigation credit for the removal of this invasive vegetation. And so we're really kind of on the front lines of having that type of program. So I do understand, what you're saying, obviously, with the pines and the issues there and them being non-native. And so it is worth pursuing, in terms of having kind of different requirements for different types of trees, because like you're saying, there are different fuel ladder issues depending upon the tree species.
All right. So does anybody have any other questions for Elizabeth, Jennifer, or Frank? Before we close?
Gene, I have a couple of comments.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Gene. They have state codes, as Jennifer was talking about, but the local codes could be more restrictive. And when all your folks are asking all these questions, you got Robert Sapien is the fire chief of the city of San Jose. When I worked there, we had a weed abatement department, but they've cut down, and that's 20-something years ago. So resources are different, but you need to put David Cohen's name down from the San Jose Council District 4 with copies going to Robert Sapien in the fire department and ask them, why aren't you removing the grass from our areas during this extreme fire hazard situation? And let them make those decisions. We're going around and around here going nowhere. Send them and code enforcement of the city of San Jose, send those copies and ask them to remove it and get a reply back. Out of 3 of them, somebody should come up with an answer, because we have extreme hazards, we have less water, and if anybody is paying attention, the state of California is a dangerous fire situation. I've written it myself, and they're not moving on it fast enough. But out there in off of 237, Coyote and Zanker areas, there's dry grass all over the place. So I sent my emails, I got a receipt. If there's going to be a situation, I'm going to hold them accountable.
Well, I did invite Hugo from District 4 and David Cohen's office. I don't know if they're here or not, but they were invited. So
Well, Stacy Brown is the chief of staff there. But District 4, David Cohen, it'll go to him. Let your receipts be known.
okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much. Any other statements before we close out?
Yeah, I just really wanted to thank our guests. You provided us with a lot of insight that we didn't have before, and we appreciate it.
I agree with Mike.
My name is Lee, and I live in Parkside. And what I did is it was before the fire that we had this year, and I had contacted Neil Church of Santa Clara Valley Water District about cutting down the dead trees along Coyote Creek right across from where I live. And I actually took Neil Church and John Chapman and a woman whose name I've forgotten on just a walkthrough after that first fire, because I was told it would be too difficult to cut down those trees. And my concern is that it is extreme fire danger here. And I can understand wanting to keep this riparian corridor kind of wild, but the problem is we've had 3 fires, and also the flood, the overflow channel in the summer around 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 5 or 6 in the afternoon, it acts as a channel for the bay breeze to come up through. And if there is a fire at that time, it just blows right up this overflow channel. And my concern is the grass fires, the wildfires from the grass, it moves slowly, and you can tamp it down. But what happens with these dead trees that are tall, you get flying embers. And that's something that is not easy to control, and fire can spread very, very quickly. And I'm really concerned because it is so dangerous to live here. And that all along Coyote Creek, at least on the San Jose side, there are dead trees. You've got brush that has never been maintained. There's an awful lot of fuel there. And you talk about the issue with maintaining the trail and the hazards of it. You don't want people to be injured. But I think the primary hazard is the fire danger in which we're living under. Any responses to this?
Jennifer, do you have a response? Or Frank?
Yeah, again, I know that you see the trees as the dead trees as the fuel hazard, but a lot of the trees are not dead, right? And so letting us assess the situation over the course of the next year is going to be extremely important. And, trust me, we've all worked in this field for many years. It's been 22 years for me now at Valley Water, and we do want to do what's right for the environment while considering public safety. And we will do that, absolutely, but it's too early to make the decision on if trees should be cut down. They're just starting to resprout. And with this recent second fire, it did burn through a lot of the area that was burnt the summer before. So it's going to take a little bit for us to really now assess the after effects of that.
I really appreciate it. I understand it's a very complicated problem. And also you have so many governing districts for this land. And I appreciate that very much. But on the other hand, I mean, I've been here through 3 fires in the last year, and it can move it's scary, and it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah, we all understand, and trust me, we're just as concerned as you are with fuel abatement and fuel reduction. And all of us went through the CCU fires here and were evacuated. John Chapman, Neil Church, who you mentioned, and walked the creek with. And so we're very aware, and we just right now we're in monitoring mode. Even if we wanted to cut the trees now, it wouldn't be something we could do because we have to get approval from the regulatory agencies, and we only are able to submit projects once a year. And so that will be next April. That would be our submittal. And so we're really just kind of monitoring the situation from now until then. And there may be, again, action that we do decide to take. And I'm sure Neil and John will keep you in the loop. It's just not something that is going to happen right now.
Okay, after that last fire, you know, I'd like it all done yesterday, as I think everybody else who lives right along this trail. But yes, I appreciate that. And also in talking with Neil Church and John Chapman, I mean, they kind of gave me an understanding of all the overlying governing agencies that, you know, they just can't go in and cut down trees. And, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you know, the riparian corridors are actually some of the most regulated areas anywhere in California.
I found that out. Yes.
I think if you keep cutting the weeds down and picking up the trash that's up against the fence of these homeowners, that their community backs up to the fence. I mean, I could probably spit at the runners as they run by. That's how close their homes are. So I think as long as the bushes the bushes that are picked up, the debris that's left, and making sure that the weeds are cut more than once a year. And I know I heard that you said you do come out here and do it more than once.
Mm-hmm.
I think that will probably make us feel much better.
Yep.
So I think I'm going to up my fire insurance.
You'll see the crews out there soon doing the weed abatement again. But just to clarify, the trash along your fence lines, that would be a City of San Jose responsibility. So if that is occurring, just let them know.
Yeah.
We're definitely taking care of the trash on the other side, and we will continue to manage for the invasives that will pop up after the fire. Like I said, we are keeping an eye on that. We're tracking the native plants that are coming back. In addition, continuing to track and treat the invasives at the, the optimum time. And so that will be one of our fuel reduction methods moving forward, and has been since we first did that invasive removal on that reach back in 2016. So we've been doing that every year since to maintain, what we have worked on and achieved. The other thing I do want to mention is that just some of you may or may not know, I don't know how often you're walking the trail there, but this corridor of creek is actually our largest heron rookery. Yeah. And so that's another factor for us, is that we have restrictions on what work we can do within 200 foot of an active heron nest, right? And so there are limitations for when we can work in there, because they do nest. They're one of the longest nesting birds. I swear it's about 9 months a year that our movements are restricted in that area. And that is to protect their colony. And after the fire, I did walk through, and they were all happily up there in those larger stature trees nesting. And fortunately, none of those trees were burnt with the fire because they're rooted in the creek channel.
Wow.
So I did see some mama herons feeding their babies, and it was really nice to see that at least they were protected from the fire.
So any more questions? We're hitting at the 1 hour mark, and I know you guys all probably want to do other things. So with that, I'm going to end our meeting, and I really appreciate Jennifer and Liz and Frank speaking tonight. And so, we got any issues, we will be in contact with you. So anyway, I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. And that's it. If I can find the end button here.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.